Good evening. I am the narrator, and welcome to my parlor. Tonight's story is The Book. The day was gray, the sun was gone, clouds covered the sky. The morning couldn't be told from the afternoon, which couldn't be told from the evening. Seconds couldn't be told from minutes, or minutes from hours. Only night could be told, when gray turned black and the moon and stars appeared. One didn't feel like doing anything. In fact, one felt like doing nothing. I don't understand the sun's effect on the mind. I only knew I felt it. But I've only so much time on this earth. I don't work any more than needed, and that day didn't at all. So I wandered the town. The day passed, but I didn't notice at first for reasons above. When I did, I had a notion. I was walking on a street that tilted downward. Not so much you would slip and slide, but enough you must watch your feet. To my side stood older homes with darkened windows. Night had yet to fall, yet they all looked abandoned. They were just there, basically irrelevant. There was a business, however, which was relevant. It bought and sold used things, any things. Things to read, to watch, to wear, and listen to, at prices lower than new things. I had passed it before. Forgot how often, but more than once. Yet I'd never been inside. I knew not why. I was partial to such places, not for the low prices, though I was poor, but for their inventory, which brought neat surprises. At times I found things I could nowhere else. I'd been to a number, and at a number of such surprises. But their frequency had declined until I'd lost interest. Now my interest resumed. I turned and walked there, crossing through its lot. On the door, the sign stated its hours, when it opened, when it closed, on what days it broke schedule. On that day, it would soon close. I had but minutes to be surprised. I stepped in. The door creaked. The floor hadn't been kept, nor had the walls nor the ceiling. At the counter stood a man who didn't keep himself. The sole customer seemed not to mind. Part of me hoped not to be surprised, so I could avoid him. It was at first uninspiring. Clothing racks dominated, but I had no need of clothes. I had clothes, though no better than these. I wore them as I scanned, seeking something beside clothes. Aha! A rack. 2 racks of books. I didn't tell you this before, as I assumed you would assume, but all my surprises had been books. There I was not quickly surprised. The books had covers and pages, but content is key, and it was recent and mundane. I don't care to lose weight. I've none to lose. Or about athletes. I'm not one. Or about parenting. I've no children and don't want them. I'm not the sort to cede defeat. I'm patient. So I kept sifting, seeing if I'd overlooked anything curious, knowing I likely had. As it happened, I had. One book, sandwiched between 2 others. I knew it differed by its look. It was older, denser, sturdier than the others. But I knew not how much, because of its title. It had none. Upon inspection it did, and I simply hadn't noticed. Blame the publisher for not placing it on the side, and for me for expecting them to. So I removed it from the shelf. Aha! I hate to say so twice in one anecdote. In fact, I hate to say it once. But for lack of a better term, and for my lexical shortcomings, it was a collection by a famous author, who is by then long dead and likely still is. Not some, but all his works, those famous, those forgotten, and those previously unpublished. The book description said so. The table of contents verified. Notably, this was not boasted on the front cover. Indeed, this was no surprise. Many authors had written many stories which anthologies have collected. In fact, I had never read him, never even of him. I'd only heard of him, from others who may or may not have known of what they spoke. Again, he is long dead. He was before my birth, and that of my parents, and so forth. And likely yours and yours. This explained his writing, which we today call anachronism, but in his day was called writing. Indeed, the contemporary reader is advised to keep a thesaurus. Every line needs to be read twice. It would not, however, explain his mindset, which we today call insanity, but in his day was called insanity. Indeed, the contemporary reader is advised to ignore this part of him, or so I've heard. I pondered this as I held the volume. It was designed to hold with age. Its pages were plain, with no illustrations, so as not to distract the viewer. How much would it cost? Above the shelf was a sign stating the types of books they carried, their prices and exceptions. As it happened, this one cost precisely the amount in my wallet. But could I? I was low on funds, blame necessities. Could I risk it? I was low on time. Minutes had passed. I had to think and fast. As I thought, fast, I heard again the clerk's obnoxious croak. I wasn't just buying it. I was buying it from him. This was an obstacle. Had he staff, they were absent or invisible. Would I brave interacting, or return it and go? If the latter, I would have to return, hopefully when his staff were there invisible. But this left the book vulnerable. If I didn't buy it, anyone could and would. That was, unless I was the first to arrive the next morning. Could I? The clerk croaked again. The sound was noxious, even more so when near. Reluctantly, I returned the book to the shelf and saw myself out. I stepped into darkness. The homes remained, but were darker and emptier than before. I felt compelled to turn and look back at the store. In a moment it had closed. Its door locked and its inside had darkened. The clerk was nowhere in sight. Normally I would have liked this, but not instantly and not without a car. But I had no time to speculate. My town was not the sort where they came out at night, but there was always the slim chance they might. Walking uphill is harder than downhill. I was relieved to reach the top, where I could walk with ease. Thank heavens for flat surfaces. Still, I couldn't relax. The book, its cover, its binding, its pages and text. Text I couldn't read. I gazed into the home's darkened windows and thought of the residence they may or may not have had, that may or may not have been. If anyone would come between the book and I, it was them. At last I came to my own home with its own dark windows. I didn't bother gazing through them, knowing what was inside. Laying in bed, my mind continued spinning. The book, its cover, its binding, again its pages and text, and again text I couldn't read. I saw again the homes and their windows. Through them, their inhabitants, ill-defined figures lurching to the store, the book on their minds as it was on mine. This continued as I slept. I couldn't distinguish between sleep and waking, as I couldn't between times of day. Suddenly they vanished. My mind went blank. I gazed left to right, seeing the outlines of my furnishings. I was awake, but the sun was not. It was still night, the dead thereof. I couldn't sleep, not because I wasn't tired, but because I couldn't be. The book had to be mine. I had to stand and had to walk, and one can't stand and can't walk while sleeping. Thus I stood and walked. In time the store would open. I crept slowly, quietly, aware of their presence. It was night, after all. I passed the necessities and the non-necessities and skipped all of them. In time, the outlines of the homes loomed in the distance, flaking the tilted street. I would soon descend. There it was, the outline of the store. My mind could see the book. What to do? Again, the store was closed. Even if I risked breaking in, I was unequipped. Was I to wait outside, explain to the clerk, and brave crossed eyes? Honestly, I'd done worse. I stood, my arms folded above my chest, I know not why. Best I knew, I stood alone, and would for several hours. Several. Not one, but several. I couldn't wait that. I couldn't wait one. The door was there. I couldn't see through its window, just as I couldn't through the side ones. The sights blurred and distorted. Inside I couldn't see, just as outside I couldn't see. I saw only the outlines of expected items laying in disuse. They, too, blurred and distorted into the surrounding darkness. I assumed there was a second floor. From the outside there seemed one. Still the stairs, if they existed, eluded me. Oddly, I didn't fear waking the owner, were he home at all. The stairs seemed to come and go, appearing when needed and vanishing when they weren't. Had I not found myself on the second floor, I would have thought them missing. The second floor was like the first, black with outlines of things blacker. As I crept, I discovered an expanse. Things were in the walls that may or may not have been doors. I cast about. If my eyes couldn't see, my hands could. But they seemed useless. They passed through the black, fading and reappearing, returning, holding nothing. If the occupant had the book, it was hidden well. Thus I went from the house into the other, whose door was much the same. Inside it was much the same outlines of the same items, arranged differently, vanishing and returning to a different tune. Again I wandered, and again I sought, again to no use. Ridiculous, I thought, as I reappeared at the door of the bookstore. Then something caught my eye, a movement or a flash in its dark distance. It didn't occur to me how I had entered, if I had somehow unlocked the door, or if it somehow already was open. I only knew I stood inside. Everything looked as it did by day, but didn't seem so. "Can I help?" the keep asked. I assume he asked me. Best I could tell, I was alone besides the asker. I tried to answer, but couldn't. I knew what to say, but couldn't. I had the words, but they weren't forthcoming. The shopkeep, perhaps the same as he was by day, but perhaps not, said something else, something I missed. I thought of the book, the homes, him, of everything and nothing. Again I reached forth. My hand slipped through the darkness. Again everything began to blur. Just minutes have passed. I haven't obtained the book, but I'm sure it remains on the store shelves.